The challenge, therefore, is to ensure that intellectual intuition does not merely assert a unity, but demonstrates how that unity is actualized. To represent actuality in a way that is not unreal requires more than the identification of intuition with thought. It demands the articulation of the process through which this identification becomes concrete and self-determining. Thought must not merely subsume immediacy, but reveal how immediacy is itself mediated, how it contains within it the seeds of differentiation and development that give rise to the richness of actuality. This task requires a dialectical approach, one that does not rest in the simplicity of intuition, but moves through the contradictions and tensions inherent in being and thought. The immediacy of intuition must be shown to unfold into the mediated structures of thought, where the unity of substance and thought is not merely posited, but realized through the dynamic interplay of unity and difference. Only in this movement can intellectual intuition transcend its potential inertia and fulfill its promise as a representation of actuality. Furthermore, the representation of actuality must not only avoid unreality, but also engage with the concrete particularities of existence. An intuition that fails to differentiate itself risks reducing the richness of being to a hollow abstraction, a sameness that negates the diversity and complexity of the real. The actuality of the absolute lies not in its abstract unity, but in its capacity to encompass and integrate particularity, demonstrating that unity is not the negation of difference, but its higher realization. Thus, the question of whether intellectual intuition avoids lapsing into inert simplicity is inseparable from the question of how it represents actuality. If intuition remains static, it falls into the unreality of abstraction. If it engages with the dialectical movement of thought, it realizes itself as a dynamic and living reflection of the absolute. The unity of being and thought, substance and subject, is not a fixed endpoint, but a process, a continual unfolding in which immediacy and mediation are reconciled within the totality of actuality. In this light, intellectual intuition must not only grasp the unity of substance and thought, but also articulate the process by which this unity becomes concrete. It must show that the immediacy of being is not opposed to thought, but contains within itself the movement of self-differentiation and self-integration that defines the real. Only by engaging with this movement can intellectual intuition fulfill its role as a representation of actuality, one that is both dynamic and true to the complexity of existence. The living substance is, furthermore, being that is in its truth subject. This assertion signifies that substance is not merely a static foundation or inert essence, but a dynamic, self-unfolding reality. It is truly real only insofar as it is the movement of self-establishment, a process characterized by the mediation of becoming other with itself. In this movement, the substance is not separate from the subject. Rather, its reality emerges precisely through its activity as subject. It does not merely exist, but actively constitutes itself, realizing its essence through the interplay of differentiation and unity. As subject, the living substance is pure, simple negativity. This negativity is not an absence or void, but the dynamic principle of self-relation and transformation. It is the force that disrupts the static simplicity of substance, driving it to differentiate itself and to enter into opposition. Through negativity, the substance splits the simple into contrasting poles, a self-doubling that gives rise to distinction and opposition. This process is the very engine of development, as it generates the tension and interaction necessary for the unfolding of reality. Yet this division into opposition is not final or absolute. The same negativity that produces difference also negates the indifferent separation of these opposing poles. It sublates the division, overcoming their externality and reconciling them within a higher unity. This negation of opposition is not a return to the original simplicity, but a transformation, a new level of unity that preserves the differences as moments within the whole. The living substance as subject is thus not a fixed identity, but a process of self-differentiation and self-reconciliation, continually generating and integrating distinctions within itself. This dynamic movement is what defines the living substance as truly real. Its reality does not lie in a static state, but in its capacity to mediate and integrate the process of becoming other. It is through this mediation that the substance achieves self-establishment, not as a pre-given essence, but as a self-constituting totality. The splitting into opposition and the subsequent negation of this division are not contradictions to be resolved externally, but the internal logic of the substance's development. The substance is subject precisely because it embodies this dialectical movement, where negativity is not destructive but generative. The living substance, as the unity of substance and subject, reveals that reality is not a static given, but a living process. It is the continual interplay of differentiation and integration, where the simple negates itself, doubles into opposition, and reconciles itself through the negation of this division. This process is not a series of disconnected stages, but a coherent movement, a self-determining activity in which the substance realizes its essence as subject. In this way, the living substance transcends the dichotomy of being and becoming, embodying both as moments of its self-unfolding truth. This understanding of the living substance has profound implications for the nature of reality and knowledge. It reveals that the true is not an inert absolute, but a dynamic totality, realized through the dialectical movement of negativity and mediation. The splitting into opposition and the reconciliation of these poles are not anomalies to be resolved externally, but the very structure of reality itself. To grasp the living substance as subject is to engage with this movement, recognizing that its unity is not a static identity, but a living process of becoming. Only this self-restoring equality, this reflection of otherness back into itself, constitutes the true. The true is not to be found in an original unity as such, nor in an immediacy as such, for these represent static, undeveloped states that lack the dynamism and movement essential to actuality. An original unity, untested and undifferentiated, remains abstract and inert, incapable of articulating the richness of being. Similarly, immediacy as such is a mere starting point, devoid of the mediation and development that transform it into a realized whole. The true lies beyond these static forms. It emerges as a process, as the dynamic becoming of itself. This self-restoring equality is the circle of becoming, a unity that does not remain inert, but actively posits and reconciles its distinctions. It presupposes its end as its purpose, and carries this end as its beginning. In this way, the true is teleological, oriented toward its fulfillment even as it begins. Its beginning is not an isolated point, but contains within itself the seed of its completion. And its completion is not an external end point, but the realization of what was implicit from the start. This circular movement is not a mere repetition, but a progressive unfolding, where the unity of the true is achieved through the resolution and integration of difference. The true, as this process, is real only through its actualization. It cannot remain a potential or abstract possibility. It must become, must articulate and realize itself in the concreteness of its development. Its reality lies in the continual mediation of its elements, the active interplay of unity and difference, immediacy and mediation. This process of actualization is not merely a means to an end, but is itself the essence of the true. The circle of becoming is not complete without its moments of differentiation and reconciliation, which constitute its content and form. Moreover, the true is not a fixed or finished state. It is the ongoing activity of self-realization. The reflection of otherness back into itself is a perpetual process where the unity of the true is constantly renewed through its engagement with difference. This self-restoring equality is not a static identity, but a living, dynamic totality, where the movement of becoming is inseparable from the being of the true. The completion of this process is not an external closure, but the fulfillment of the true's immanent purpose, its self-realization as a unified whole. This conception of the true challenges any understanding that seeks to isolate unity, immediacy, or completion as separate or self-sufficient. The true is not an original unity that precedes difference, nor an immediacy that excludes mediation, nor an endpoint that negates the process of becoming. It is the circle that unites these moments, where the beginning presupposes the end, and the end fulfills the beginning. Its reality is inseparable from the process through which it becomes itself, where unity is achieved not by negating difference, but by integrating it into a higher whole.